poles, traffic signals, and the like. And House Bill 7152 addresses both of those needs. Under the terms of the legislation, the proposed council will provide a process, or a front door, if you will, for the industry to come and apply to the state for the use of state property for the placement of wireless infrastructure. Now, I want to be very clear. It doesn't obligate the state to accept any proposal we have or request to use state property. It just creates a process for us to apply to do so. The state retains the opportunity to say no to any application, which we think is smart. And finally, Section 2 of the bill, by trying to pull together in a collaborative process both all of the state actors as well as municipalities to determine a process that allow for the streamlined siting of wireless facilities on municipal property, we think is a good one. There are a lot of important questions that go into that. I think the governor's office, to their credit, has taken the right approach, which is to try to bring parties together, to have a discussion, to figure out what those right rules are like, and then hopefully to make a proposal or presentation back to this committee and to the legislature next session to take further action. With that, I'm happy to take any questions you have.
Thank you.
Thank you, John, for being here today. I appreciate your giving the new administration credit for being open-minded about finding new ways to both further the goal of access while also ideally finding some revenue generation along the way as well. You also heard the governor recently talk about the opportunities with public-private partnerships. And I was wondering if you were aware of models in other states where we've been able to move forward the agenda whereby there's more of a comprehensive plan rather than a site-by-site kind of proposal, which we could look at.
I think, and part of this legislation does try to speak to that, and we've had some good discussions with the administration in that regard, and trying to make sure the industry does a better job of consulting with the state. So we don't come in with sort of one-by-one examples, but to lay out sort of, what does our work plan look like in the next 6 months to a year? We think that that's probably the right approach to take. We've suggested some sort of clarifying language to the administration on some of the language in the bill, and look forward to working with them and with you towards that regard. But we think that there's certainly an opportunity for us to work with the administration in that regard.
I know it's a challenge to negotiate with a governor who may know as much about this as many people on your side, but there does seem to be an opportunity for a potentially grander bargain that could be a win-win for all the parties involved. And I would like to see more of a strategy inherent in this, and rather than the approach whereby or the appropriate entity considers a specific side proposal in a vacuum, which may not be clear as to what the ultimate goal is.
Yeah, understood. I think that that's really the intent of the administration's language in creating that council, is to have that broader strategy that's looking at a whole picture of what's going on in the state of Connecticut.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your testimony. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Just a quick follow-up on the citing question. What's been your experience with trying to cite on state properties?
It's been frustrating, to say the least. I think it very much depends upon the particular agency with whom you're dealing with, whether it's the Department of Transportation or DEEP or one of the universities. Quite often, just trying to get any sort of response at all it'll take 6 months to a year to get any sort of acknowledgement of a request. In some cases, and not all. And it's been our experience, particularly with DOT property as an example, where they said, we understand what you're trying to do, or actually that was about a year of them trying to understand what we were trying to do. And then essentially their view was, we just aren't allowed to do this under the laws as they exist today. And we had, I thought, a very good and frank conversation with them about, let's change the law to allow for it. And I don't think it's something, and I don't want to put words in the DOT's mouth, that they disagree with. They just want to make sure that they're allowed to do it under the law, and I think that that's really the intent of what the governor is trying to do here. But the process today, to be very frank with you, is flawed. I'll give you two good examples. We were trying to build a small cell at a way station in Greenwich and also at a rest area in Darien. Now, these facilities are about 12 by 24 with two radio units that are 8 by 8, 8 inches by 8 inches. It took, as I said, 6 months to a year to eventually be told no. When I did appeal up to the commissioner's office, there was a further consideration, and eventually the answer was no because of the law. But frankly, a facility of that size, to me, doesn't seem like it should, A, ever end in an answer of no, and B, shouldn't take that long to have an answer rendered either.
And I guess a follow-up to that was your experience with on the municipal side.
Yeah, the municipal side is really important. So, as I mentioned earlier, Connecticut has a really good rules with respect to placing small cells on wooden utility poles in the electric distribution system, and that works great for large parts of Connecticut. But when you get in dense urban environments where there is not an electric distribution center, where there are not utility poles, you need to use other facilities. So that's light stanchions and the like. And we have done this throughout the country with a lot of success. In Connecticut, what it really requires is an agreement between the carrier and between the city as to the property you're able to use, what the process is to apply to use that property, the rent and terms and conditions under which you will be able to use it. Even getting red line comments to a proposed draft agreement, a standard agreement that we've used all over the country, has taken a year, if not longer. We have been working to try to get agreements in 5 or 6 major cities in the state of Connecticut for the better part of 2 years and still don't have an agreement. So I think it's ripe for action. I do think the governor's office, to their credit again, has taken the right approach, which is let's get everybody in the room and figure out what this looks like. Let's not just offer up a set of recommendations, but let's work cooperatively together. And that's something we at AT&T and I think others in the industry would be welcome to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Have a lovely day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator, very much.
Thank you. Next on our list is Beth Cooley. Good afternoon.
There we go. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Beth Cooley. I am the Senior Director of State Legislative Affairs at CTIA. CTIA is the trade association for the wireless communications industry, and we represent the wireless carriers, handset manufacturers, app companies, and their suppliers. I am here today to express our support with amendments to House Bill 7152. 7152 outlines a laudable goal, seeking to create a process for the deployment of personal wireless facilities, including small wireless infrastructure or small cells, on state assets. The legislation is well intended, but we do have some concerns that there may be some negative unintended consequences. Excuse me. We look forward to working with the administration and this committee to address these concerns. Firstly, House Bill 7152 addresses a key issue in the state of Connecticut, the fact that there are more wireless devices than there are people, and over 1/3 of of residents of Connecticut live in wireless-only households. Now, while believe it or not, you actually can make a phone call on your wireless device, the trend is towards an insatiable amount of appetite for mobile data, which has been breaking records year over year. Because of these demands from the wireless industry's customers, your constituents, wireless networks need to be both updated to meet today's demand and readied for the next generation of wireless networks called 5G. House Bill 7152 addresses this key issue. So as Mr. Emra mentioned, we're talking about House Bill 7152. What does it do? It recognizes that the existing rules governing wireless networks, they're designed for those wireless facilities that can be up to 200 feet tall or higher. Tomorrow's networks will rely on new small cell technology, which will be placed on structures such as utility poles and streetlights. These new networks need new rules, and House Bill 7152 establishes a common sense framework for deployment on state facilities. House Bill 7152 is also a step towards realizing 5G, or fifth generation, in Connecticut. 5G networks will provide needed new capacity to accommodate growing consumer demands, help connect 100 times more devices at speeds up to 100 times faster than today. This is also an exciting economic development time, as Accenture has found that 5G and small cell deployments will provide tremendous economic benefits. Specifically, Accenture estimates that wireless operators will invest as much as $275 billion nationwide of their own money, not taxpayer money, creating up to 3 million new jobs nationally. In Connecticut specifically, in a community like Bridgeport, we could see the creation of over 1,300 jobs and an increase in GDP by over 220 million. Now, you may have recently heard that the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, recently took action in this space by setting clear timelines and cost-based fees for state and local siting purposes. Now, while the FCC's leadership in this role and states remain critical, states still play a key role in operationalizing the order. And that's what House Bill 7152 helps to do. While over 21 states at this time have passed statewide small cell legislation, and we expect approximately a dozen states to consider similar legislation this year, 7152 acknowledges that date certain action after an application for a small cell is filed is needed, and that is compliant with the FCC order. So in closing, CTIA and our members support 7152 with amendments. We applaud the administration and look forward to working with the administration and interested stakeholders to move it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Anybody have any? Yep.
Just one question. Is it the industry's belief that the radio frequency radiation issued by these small cells is harmless, despite location in buildings or at beaches or whatever?
So CTIA, we are not a scientific agency. We defer to those agencies and experts who are. First and foremost, we comply with the FCC's radio frequency guidelines. So all of our facilities have to adhere to those emission levels, which are very conservative and hundreds of times set such below such any issues as may have been found to humans, which there have not been. It's important to remember that the RF emissions from small wireless facilities and the spectrum that is anticipated to be used is non-ionizing. So again, I am not the scientific agency. We defer to those that are, and the science that is out there, which we'd be happy to provide to you, does not show any linkage between.
Are you aware that the federal government forbid the states to take radio frequency radiation into account when dealing with or citing these locations?
Yes, I'm aware.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Amanda DeVito.